Welcome to Scary Stories to Fall Asleep To, Told in the Rain. Today I'm literally reading these stories while it's raining outside. There's a dogman in those woods. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I had a scary dogman experience one time. It really wrecked my holiday, and the same for my friends. It was supposed to be a relaxing weekend in a cabin in the woods of western Pennsylvania. Just the few of us enjoying the peace and quiet. But as the sun went down on our first night, something started to move around outside that cabin. At first it was just a rustling in the bushes, or a twig snapping underfoot. But soon enough, we could see the outline of something moving in the shadows. It was large, and its movements were like nothing we had ever seen before. Now I feel I should point out that this trip started when the four of us were gathered at my apartment, watching old VHS videotapes, and talking about how we feel modern technology sucks. We said we should go for a weekend in the woods, and leave our cell phones at home. In fact, we should leave everything from the 21st century at home. My friend I'll call Bart said his uncle had a cabin in the woods with no Wi-Fi, but it had an old TV and a VHS player. Bart's idea was that we'd have an 80s or 90s weekend, pick a year, and only bring tapes from before that cutoff date. It seemed like a great idea to us at the time, but once we were out in the middle of nowhere and realized we had no cell phones, no GPS, no Wi-Fi, etc., then that idea stopped seeming so great. As the night wore on and we were watching old scary VHS movies, things started to get bad. We could hear howling in the distance. And soon enough, we saw something emerging from the darkness. It was a dog, but not any kind of dog we had ever seen before. Its eyes were glowing in the moonlight, and its fur looked like it was matted with dirt and possibly blood. We tried to scare it away by making noises, but it wouldn't leave. We locked the doors and the windows, but we could hear it scratching at the wood outside, in places where we couldn't see it, and we were wondering if it was trying to break in. As the night passed, more dog-like creatures, all standing on their hind legs and walking around, appeared. When you saw one of them in silhouette, it really looked like that Egyptian god Anubis walking through the woods. It was pretty chilling. The upright dogs circled the cabin, their howls filling the air with dread. We were trapped, isolated, and alone, in the middle of the woods, with no one to help us. But this was our own decision. This was the result of our own choice. It was a scary night, but eventually the sun came up, and we woke up that next morning to find canine tracks outside the cabin. They were huge, with claw marks that seemed to be deeper than any dog's paws could have possibly made. Much of the morning and afternoon were spent discussing the possibility that maybe we should go home a day early. I, for one, couldn't enjoy any of the movies we were playing on that ancient VCR. I couldn't even pay attention to them, knowing that an entire clan of dogmen were all around outside. As the sun went down that night, we prepared ourselves for the worst. We sat in silence, listening to the howls and growls outside, knowing that it was only a matter of time before those dogs might try to break in. We grabbed whatever we could: knives, shovels, anything to protect ourselves. But I sensed deep down that it might not be enough. And then there was a shot outside, and the howls stopped. The scratching and gnawing ceased. We sat in silence, listening for more, but there was nothing. None of us ran any more movies that night, but nobody went to sleep either. We just sat there listening to nothing, wondering what those dogmen were going to do next, or who had fired that shot. It turned out that they probably all just left, but none of us got any sleep anyway. That was the worst night of my life, and I felt physically ill by the next morning when we left the cabin, shaken and terrified. That is one place I wouldn't go back to even if you paid me $10,000. How I became a werewolf. Dear Scary Stories NYC. I never believed in curses until one was placed on me. I was just a normal woman going about my life. But then one night, everything changed. I was out walking alone in the woods when I was attacked by a pack of wolves. I didn't stand a chance against them. They clawed and bit at me, tearing my flesh and ripping the ass out of my clothes. And then, at the height of the attack, something strange happened. A dark figure appeared from the shadows, one with either a dog head or a dog head mask, and I saw it make a strange gesture at me with its wrist. Those were not ordinary wolves that had scratched and bitten me. Those bites gave me lycanthropy, and the gestures of this shamanic creature cursed me with werewolfism. Even in that moment, I understood all of this somehow. I collapsed in a faint onto the path in the woods. When I woke up, I don't know how much later, there was nobody else there, and I had no cuts on me at all from the scratches and bites I remembered receiving. At first I didn't think too much of it. I assumed it was just another fainting spell because of all the boosters I'd gotten. I figured all the stuff about werewolves was just a strange dream, a hallucination, brought on by the shock of the fainting spell. But then, on the next full moon, the change overtook me. It was the most terrifying experience of my life. My bones broke, my skin split, and I felt a pain like nothing I'd ever felt before. And then, before I knew it, I was no longer me. I was a beast, a wild animal, set loose upon the world. I could smell every scent, hear every sound, feel every vibration in the earth. I was stronger, faster, and more lethal than any creature I had ever encountered. But the real horror came when I reverted back to human form. As the months went by, I learned to control the transformation, to lock myself away and keep the monster from emerging. But I knew that it was only a matter of time before I would be exposed. The curse weighed heavily on my shoulders, a burden that I could never escape. And as I lay in bed at night, knowing that the next full moon was approaching, I could feel the fear building inside me, tearing away at my sanity. I was a prisoner, trapped in a body that was no longer my own, and the curse would never let me go. I've kept a diary of my mornings waking from my werewolf spells, and it's helped me remember more of the experience each time. I'd be glad to share it with you if you'd like to present it on your show, but it would be quite a bit of typing from my handwritten diary, so I'll only do it if you guys would really want to hear about what my life has become since this major change. But I understand if all that sounds too personal for the kind of show you do. Just let me know either way. The Bedroom Invaders. Dear Scary Stories NYC. Do you do stories about monsters that come into your bedroom at night? Because I get these nauseating creatures. I guess they're aliens, but they seem almost paranormal somehow too. And each morning, the memory of the Bedroom Invaders stays with me for a long time, haunting me with their sickening appearance and their slimy touch. These things don't look like anything I've ever seen before. Their skin is a sickly green color most nights, but one time, around half of them seemed to have skin that was more of a burnt orange or a light brown hue. They seemed to be covered in a layer of mucus, giving them a slick and slimy texture. Their eyes are huge and black, dominating their relatively small inhuman heads. And their limbs are long and thin, with fingers that seem to stretch out further than should be natural. But it was their touch that was truly sickening. It's like having a cold, slimy, dead fish laid against your skin. The sensation is revolting, and it makes goosebumps rise all over my body. Every time they touched me, I felt like I was gonna vomit, and even thinking about it makes me queasy. I could never get a good look at their clothing or uniforms, as their appearance was so unsettling that it was difficult for me to focus on anything else. But I do remember that they had some sort of tool or device that they used to probe and examine me. It was cold and hard, and I could feel it digging into my flesh. To this day, I wonder what they did to me that night, and what their intentions were. Were they just curious beings investigating the humans of this world? Or were they something more sinister, with the intention of doing harm? The first time the Bedroom Invaders came from me, I woke up to the feeling of someone standing over my bed. My eyes snapped open, but before I could even take a breath, something grabbed me. I struggled, kicking and flailing, but it was like I was caught in a spider's web. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I couldn't do anything, as the thing tugged me out of bed and through the air. My body was weightless as we flew through the darkness. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel the cold air rushing past my face as we ascended higher and higher into the sky. Suddenly we stopped. I felt the ground beneath me, but it was cold and hard like metal. I looked around, trying to adjust to the pitch blackness around me, and then I saw them. I guess you'd call them aliens, with small lizard heads and wide bulbous eyes, on top of tall, roughly humanoid forms, staring at me from every angle. They spoke in a language I couldn't understand, their voices high-pitched and grating. There was none of the telepathic communication you hear about with gray alien abductions, so I don't know for sure that these were aliens at all. I was terrified, alone, and helpless. They strapped me to a metal table, and I felt their slimy hands probe and prod me as they ran tests and experiments. Every touch sent waves of nausea through my body, and I was sure they were going to kill me. But then, just as suddenly as they appeared, they were gone. I was alone in the darkness, with bruises and cuts on my body that I wouldn't be able to explain to my family or friends. Realizing I was back in my bed, I tried to go back to sleep. I couldn't though, because I felt like if I went back to sleep, that those slimy things would come back for me, and I would be helpless to stop it. The feeling of dread and foreboding stayed with me for days, weeks, months, as I tried to shake off the memory of my abduction. But I knew that somewhere, out there in the darkness, they're still watching me, waiting for their next chance to take me away. And it's only a matter of time until I feel those cold, nasty hands gripping me in the night all over again. Hey, it's your old pal Bigfoot with a hot new offer for you for summer. Snag these badass new Scary Stories NYC sandal slide things modeled here by your old pal Bigfoot, and take 25% of the price off by using the checkout code YTShopping25. It's a sweet deal for both of us because YouTube is covering that 25% discount. The link should be in the description, and if you're on YouTube and it's May or June of 2023, then you might see an image of it right under this video. It comes in 5 different colors, so use them to express yourselves. Grandma's house. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I have a paranormal experience I can't explain if you want to hear it. It happened when I tried to make friends with my grandmother who I'd never met before. I grew up on the West Coast, while Grandma lived up in Maine. When my job moved me to Massachusetts, I decided to make the drive all the way up to Maine to meet the grand old lady, who I knew was getting up in years. It was supposed to be a quick visit, but it turned into a truly creepy experience that I will never forget. I could tell something was off as soon as I arrived. Grandma was polite, but distant. The house was old and creaky, and the air inside felt heavy and thick. My grandmother's eyes held a gleam of fear all the time, for no apparent reason. The way I got there was utterly bizarre as that house itself. I was driving on the highway, following the instructions Grandma had given me, which got me hopelessly lost. I was going down a lonely stretch of highway through the woods, hoping for a street sign that would at least tell me what road I was on, when suddenly a very large rabbit, the largest I'd ever seen, hopped out onto the road right in front of my car. I swerved to the right to avoid hitting him, and I crashed through the small barrier on the side of the road, rolling down an embankment into the woods. The angle suddenly got far steeper, and the car at some points was not in touch with anything at all, as we went into free fall for a second or two before landing hard and continuing to roll down that hill through the woods and around into the parking area behind a stately mansion estate. My front end slammed into a wall, and the car was finally stopped. I was pretty shook up, but I didn't seem to have gotten injured, so I went looking for someone who lived there to report the incident to and try to get a tow truck or something. I ran into a gardener who brought me inside, and after speaking to various people who worked there, I was introduced to the homeowner, who was, of course, my grandmother. I mean, of course it was. I was quite stunned as I explained the story to her, but she didn't find it as entertaining as I had. Grandma seemed quite distracted, looking around herself nervously, as though she could see things there that I couldn't. She had her chauffeur take care of getting my car fixed, and informed me solemnly that I would have to stay with her in the meantime. She said it that way, not that I was invited to stay or anything. I would have to. It was undesirable, but unavoidable. Grandma brought me to her guest room and told me I could stay there, but before I could even respond, she warned me against staying in that very same guest room, telling me strange things had happened there before. I had no idea how to respond to that, but I didn't want to be rude, so I just went inside the room that my very intense grandmother had warned me not to go into. As I got ready for bed that night, I tried to shake off the eerie feeling that seemed to linger in every corner of the room. I was just drifting off when I heard a noise, like something dragging across the floor. I rolled over and forced myself to go back to sleep, telling myself it was just my imagination. But then I heard it again. This time I was wide awake and fully aware of the sound. Someone or something had to be in that room with me. I couldn't see anything, but the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. I tried to ignore it and go back to sleep, but I could feel a presence, as if someone was watching me. Suddenly I saw a flicker of movement out of the corner of my eye. I bolted upright just in time to see a ghostly figure standing at the foot of my bed. It was a woman, translucent and shimmering, with long dark hair that seemed to flow around her like a river. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The woman didn't move, but I could feel her eyes on me. It was as if she was searching for something deep inside me, some hidden secret that I didn't even know existed. The longer she stood there, the more I felt like I was drowning in her gaze. Finally, she vanished into thin air, leaving me alone in the darkness with my racing heartbeat. I didn't sleep the rest of the night, and I never returned to my grandmother's house again. I feel like I'm left over a barrel because I just can't rhyme anything with Nicholas Carroll. Please join me in thanking Nicholas Carroll, who has been a channel member 29 months now. Nicholas gets to see our weekly secret uncensored stories for a month, and so can you by following the instructions of our international TV spokesmongrel, Henry Lee Dogman. Hank? Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that when it cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.